Casey Hunt joins me now from Capitol Hill, as well as the panel is back. John Harwood, Sarah Fagan, Doug Thornell. So, Casey, I would have to say my big shock in this vote is I would have taken 12 as the number, 10 to 12 as the over-under, but I never would have thought you'd get to 12 without Sasse, Tillis, and Gardner. I think that is the surprise of this end result.
Well, and Chuck, I think the point that you were making before the break is exactly the right one. I mean, who are the people that are most worried about President Trump's support in 2020 and whether or not he's going to stand behind him? Because they, quite frankly, face potential primary challenges before they get to general election, and they're going to need the president, getting the base out to vote for them, or they really have, much less hope. So I do think it was a really interesting political play on their part. And I also think that the overall number really tells you just how angry Republicans are about this. I mean, as you know well, Republicans simply haven't broken with this president with any sort of regularity. And it took us a while to get to this point. A lot of angry meetings over lunch here at the Capitol, a lot of discontent. And that you had somebody like Senator Rob Portman doing what he did, I think really sends a message that, the president should take, yes, this is one issue where he's, angry and focused on it, but I think it's pretty indicative of a broader trend.
Casey, 12 means what? 12 people were comfortable enough to vote against the president, which means how many in that caucus really were against him on this?
Well, I mean, I certainly think at least those additional three. And, frankly, Mitch McConnell was against it. He said before he was against it. He just agreed basically to go along and to try to convince people to go with the president because he didn't want the government to shut down again. It would have been the quote unquote third kick of the mule. And so this was kind of the deal he cut. And I think, Senator Cornyn is a little bit in the same boat. Trying to do what the leadership wants him to do. But I got to tell you, when you listen to McConnell come out of these lunches every day, it did not feel as though he was making this hard sell and really trying to tell his conference what to do on this. I think he, better than anything, he knows where his people are. That's, what he is extraordinarily good at. And I think he recognized all the way along this was a huge problem.
Sarah Fagan, it does seem that some of these Republican senators with 2020 on the mind said, are even if they're going to have tough general elections like Tillis and Gardner, they're like primary, still something I fear more. Let me read you Sasse's statement because he sort of, I felt like did gymnastics. He's the most surprising, I think, principally. Today's resolution doesn't fix anything because the root problem here can't be fixed with bare-knuckled politics, but rather with a deliberate debate about the powers that Congress has been giving away and that the executive has therefore claimed. Except he basically just voted to affirm giving away those powers.
Well, he did, but that was the whole argument. Not one of these senators came out and said Trump was wrong about the border wall. They talked about constitutional power, and some of them, I think, probably legitimately are concerned about separation of powers, and some of them probably don't agree with Trump, but they all hid behind the separation of powers argument. And so it shows you the power of the president with Republican voters.
Doug, I have to say, I don't know what's worse, if feeling on the wrong side of your party's leader or giving your opponents, whether primary or general, the opportunity to call you flip-flopper. I think Tillis is playing with fire here.
Yep. Going back and forth.
Because he's on the record. He was very bold in coming out early.
Well, you look fake. You look inauthentic, right? It looks like you're making decisions. You look weak. And it looks like you're making decisions based off of politics or polling. And Tillis is going to be in trouble. He is a targeted senator by the DSCC. We should mention Martha McSally in Arizona voted with the president on this vote as well. She's going up against Mark Kelly in a very, very tough race. Maybe a couple other people get into that. And so, yeah, absolutely. I mean, voters will forgive you if you vote against something that they believe in. But if you go back and forth, then that's when it's going to be that it's very hard to
especially if you've made clear what your principles are. I mean, Tom Tillis couldn't have been clearer on these are my principles, and he articulated them in the newspaper, and then he voted the other way. And, it goes without saying, this emergency declaration with a broad electorate is not popular.
Right. The only thing that I would say, to Tillis's defense is while he's going to have some headaches over the way this unfolded, is this is not like Obamacare vote.
That's right.
This is a process vote,
That's
ultimately.
Right.
And so, does that really penalize him? At the end of the day, probably not.
Casey Hunt, can we have the larger conversation here, which is The president asked for money. Congress said no. The president declared a national emergency. Congress said no. He's going to do it anyway because Congress didn't, he's basically defying Congress twice. We're not seeming to have that conversation here. The president is just so comfortably ignoring the power of the legislative branch.
He absolutely is, Chuck. And, I think one of the reasons why, it feels as though that's easy to overlook is because this fits right in to the pattern of how President Trump has treated the norms and usual ways of how things work here in Washington. And, don't forget, this happened because we are living in an era of divided government. I mean, if Paul Ryan's still running the House of Representatives, this resolution never goes to the Senate. Forget it.
True.
So, he is having to kind of live in this new reality. And I think, it's also a takeaway for voters that, they're voting in these Democrats to the House really did actually make a difference, because there would have been so many more moments like this in the first year or 2 years of President Trump's time in office. Had there been divided government, I think it really underscores the degree to which Republicans here at the Capitol, and we talk about this a lot, but I think from a broad perspective, it's incidents like these that help illuminate just how much they simply rolled over and gave this president what he wanted.
Yeah. All right. Casey Hunt on the Hill for us today. It was, every once in a while you get fascinating votes out of the Senate, and this was
Still
one of them.
Still got to worry about the judicial branch, which is not as pliable as Tom Tillis.
No, it's not. And the Supreme Court, it's going to be fascinating whether they engage in this debate. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.